is a general discussion about mental health. It is not to be interpreted as specific advice for a specific situation. Every situation is unique and requires advice to be tailored and adapted to that situation. All information in this broadcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional mental health services. If you or a loved one are experiencing mental health distress, please speak to a licensed professional in your area.
It's time to shine that light that lives in you. Living well. It's not too late to change. It's time to be the change. Living well. It's time to shine that light that lives in you. Living well. It's not too late to change. It's time to be the change.
Living well takes a community. So remember to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share with a friend. Welcome to Living Well, where we attend to the mind, the heart, the body, and the soul. Now, as we are coming on the other side of that global pandemic that has had us kind of dispersed, we are now feeling more and more comfortable gathering with family at large events. And that means inevitably, some of that old family drama that we thought might have been long dead and buried is gonna come up. So how do we deal with, Aunt Nene and Uncle Shay Shay? How do we handle the things that are said to us, the secrets that have been held in our family, and the fights that nobody has ever processed? Well, I don't have to ask you if this is connected to you or if you know someone, because we all have family, and family is made up of all different types of personalities. So this episode is for you. Stay with us. We're going to talk about family roles, how we can manage it, what it looks like, and how you can come out of it safe and sane. Let's get ready to talk about it. This is Living Well. All right, so you know what time it is. It is time for us to gather around the water cooler and have some conversation about things that are going on today. Now, I was thinking about this. I was like, what are we going to talk about for the water cooler today? And you remember that movie, Almost Christmas? I think it came out like in 2017.
With Danny Glover?
Yep.
Yeah.
Danny Glover.
Oh my God, it was a big cast. Danny Glover,
Yep.
Monique,
Gabrielle
Union.
Right. Nia Long.
Yeah. All of them.
Exactly.
Yes.
JB Smooth.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If y'all don't remember it, you need to go back and look at it on YouTube. But I thought about family gatherings and how exciting they can be.
I like that word, exciting. You really being nice.
They can be exciting and a little bit intense.
Yes.
Right? And I was just thinking about how important it is for us to kind of talk about how we manage family, like what comes up in families, how we manage family. I was even thinking about like one scene that came to mind, and maybe it's because I'm thinking about the holidays. And even though this one is around Christmas, this could happen at any holiday, any time when family is going to get together, whether it's Christmas or Easter,
Birthday,
right?
Sunday dinner,
Weddings,
and funerals.
And funerals. So any of those can really kind of bring up old family dynamics and old family unfinished business.
So true.
Right? If I just describe this scene, right? They're sitting around the table trying to have this holiday dinner, right? This gathering dinner. And then, but what's happening at the table? There's secrets at the table.
Oh, yeah.
There's secrets, right? There's secrets at the table because Danny Glover getting ready to sell the family house. And also JB Smooth.
Got some extracurricular activities going on.
Exactly.
That he thinks is a secret.
Exactly. Who is that? Gabrielle Union is having her own men trouble.
Yes.
All of that. You have Monique who's coming in, who's like a spitfire,
She's the aunt.
She's the aunt. She's the sister who died.
Yes.
Exactly.
Of the woman who died.
But her tone, the words that she uses, how she comes at people could be, really abrasive and aggressive. And although it's a kind of like leaning towards comedy, we know what happens when you're at family meal and you might be getting cussed out,
Right.
you know, or
Right.
people are cussing at you, or, you know, you got the auntie, because later on in the scene, she goes and gets the shotgun, right? So,
There's always one.
exactly. There's always one.
one.
So I was just thinking about, you know, I think we should kind of talk about what happens when people get together in families.
And I think that that's important because we know, like you said, it can pop off. Family dynamics is something that we know that happens all the time, but how are people really navigating these family dynamics? How are people, you know, dealing and adjusting? So I agree with you. I think that would be a perfect conversation to have.
Exactly. And I'm thinking, even looking at Almost Christmas and even thinking about, you know, some of the families that we've worked with,
Yes.
or even that I know personally, there's a saying that we often use in psychology, you're as sick as your secrets.
Right.
And thinking about this scene, like, you know, there's the selling of the house and the father hasn't disclosed that, but one family member knows that that's going to happen.
Yes.
There's also J.B. Smooth's affair, which has been
Yes.
discovered by another person, and they're sitting at this table, you know, with these secrets, and it's you can't be authentic
Not at all.
when there's secrets that are lingering around in the family.
Not at all.
And although in this movie, I wouldn't even say that they're light secrets, because getting rid of family, you know, family possessions and adultery, but sometimes, you know, there was abuse in the family.
Absolutely.
That is a secret and that people are not talking about, but we're expected to sit at this family table and have dinner. And
As if
interact.
nothing is happening. And it, gosh, how many times do we see families or members who are part of families where these secrets are happening multiple times, like there are multiple secrets. And the expectation is, even when it's not holidays, the expectation is, oh, I got to go to Big Mama's house every Sunday. And every Sunday you're going to family and expected to go and be around family. And you have all these, let's just say, toxic people, people who have different roles, you know, in the family, and how people are impacted by it. So you're right. I think it's not so much about any particular holiday. It's just anytime family get together, and what it must be like to have to carry that and hold that. If we see it in comedy, but it can be very, very detrimental to an individual and a family.
And a family. And although some of it may be funny, there's some, you know, individuals who act certain ways. Let's say they have a drinking problem, or, you know, a problem with alcohol, and they get drunk and they say funny things.
Right.
Sometimes that could be funny, but then when that leads into neglect or abuse,
Right.
or, you know, not taking care of your responsibilities, or letting out secrets when you're in like, all of that can cause family drama.
Yes.
So I think we've talked about this as it relates to Almost Christmas, right? This great movie. But I think we should take a break and put on our doctor hats and come back, and we're going to take this conversation to the next level. Not just Dr. Erica and Dr. Nisi talking, but let's bring out Dr. Holmes and Dr. Lark and give you some real tools and an understanding of what your role is in this family dynamic and how you can kind of take control of it. So let's move on and go to the couch, and we'll be the expert.
That's right.
All right.
Good point.
All right, so now let's kind of jump into the deep end of the pool and talk about how we understand family dynamics, and also what the different roles that individuals often take on. And so I think to start this conversation, I'll mention one psychological theorist.
Okay.
Her name is Virginia Satir.
Yes.
And she's really well known for talking about family roles.
Yes.
And in her early work, she identified 5 different types of roles that individuals often fall into in the family. So we're going to talk about those roles. And I want you to think, as you're watching, if any of these roles fit you or other family members, right? Will they come to mind? Does someone in particular come to mind? And so I'll start with the first one, who is the blamer. So the blamer, and the blamer is the person that kind of finds fault in others or finds fault in everyone. If I think about the clip early on, and we talked about the movie Almost Christmas and that family scene, and Nia Long's character kind of fit that. She always found fault in her sister Gabrielle Union and other people.
Yeah, that's true. That's a perfect example, because blamers, they find fault in everyone else except themselves. And it's actually a defensive position that they take. Thinking about satir and blamer, another role that comes to mind is what satir would call is the placator, the blessed are the peacemakers, if you will. And that placator is the one that they don't want to see anything go wrong in the family. It's like, okay, they avoid conflict at all cost, and it is, we just want everything to be good. And sometimes it can even be self-sacrificing. And reflecting back on thinking about the movie, Kimberly Lease is the one who comes to mind for me with that one. It's almost like that there's something happening, but you just want to avoid it. I don't want to ruffle any feathers and keep peace. So I often refer to them as blessed are the peacemakers.
Blessed are the peacemaker, but they're making peace in an unhealthy way.
In a very unhealthy way.
Because with the placator ignores all of the unhealthy, toxic behavior that's happening within the family, and they try to stay neutral, in the middle, even if they know that someone's behavior is wrong, if it is hurtful. They won't take a stand for anyone. They try to say, well, they're good people on both sides. Yeah. So, that kind of person. So it's kind of a false peacemaking kind of person. And even if we go back to the blamer, so that placator will excuse the blamer's behavior.
Yes.
The fact that the blamer puts people down, finds fault in everyone, puts themselves in a position of superiority to judge. The placator would be like, oh, she just, you know how she is. Yeah, exactly, for her in an attempt to keep peace. But what it does is it alienates and also invalidates other people who've been hurt by this behavior.
Exactly.
Which can increase conflict.
Exactly. And even as you were talking, what came to mind was when I think about the role of the placator and the position that they take, that can be very dangerous too. That can be very dangerous.
In what ways? Break that down.
I say it can be dangerous to the point that you just mentioned. When you have someone who, let's just say they are a victim, maybe they have suffered some type of abuse at the hands of another family member or the blamer for that matter. But when someone comes along and invalidates that, and they are dismissing and ignoring this thing, this secret, this issue, what happens is it creates space for it to continue because no one is calling it out. No one is speaking that difficult truth. And that's why I say it can become dangerous, because it allows the situation to perpetuate and continue to go on.
It seems like in some ways the placator believes that by not addressing these issues, not acknowledging these issues, they'll somehow go away. I've even seen in families where you talked about abuse, where the victim or survivor, I like calling
survivor, that's better. Yes.
Where the survivor might try to tell a parent or a sibling, and the parent or the sibling might act in a placator role. Oh, they were having a hard time, and we'll just make sure that we keep you away from that person, or, we don't want to tell anybody else because it could break up our family, right? And so in that way, you're exactly right. It can do a lot of harm. Now, another one that comes to mind is, the distractor. And the distractor is a person who kind of stirs things up or shifts focus away from the problem or the conflict at hand. And they might do this in a comedic relief way. And Monique immediately comes to mind, right? That there are these serious events that are happening, but they'll crack a joke, or, they might even feign illness. Oh, my head hurts, to kind of distract folks' attention away from whatever the conflict or the disagreement is within the family, to try, because they can't handle that level of intensity, that level of intense interaction. And so Monique immediately in this film comes to mind.
Yeah, Monique definitely had she's definitely had her roles to play. Another role that comes to mind is sometimes we see the super reasonable, or the computer, brain. This is the person who intellectualizes everything. They, if there's a problem or there's something happening, similar to the placater, but they remove emotion, remove all emotion, because the intensity of the emotion is too much. And you know what? They intellectualize everything, and they want to rationalize everything. There's always an explanation, not so much an excuse, but an explanation as to, this is happening because I failed to eat the proper vegetables that I was supposed to eat this morning. And that is why I have this type of response. Something I know is, outlandish. However, you're getting the point that they're super reasonable, and they want to intellectualize everything. So thinking about the roles, again, thinking about the movie, like you mentioned, Danny Glover. Danny Glover comes to mind. Everyone is not going off, but
highly charged,
emotional.
Sell mama's house.
Exactly.
This is our house, right?
And he's like, okay, this is my house. Now, what I will say also, sometimes the super reasonable, they can present as though they're trying to be the real calm one, because you can remember in that episode, everybody else is highly charged, and he's just calm. And some might find that, oh, that's a good skill to have. It's a good position to take. However, if it's a way for you not to deal with and not address what is happening around you, then, being super reasonable and intellectualizing and not dealing with the emotion or going to the emotion is definitely one. And I think Danny Glover fits that.
I agree. And, when we think about the intellectual or the super reasonable, because they allow their thoughts, right, to lead, they can miss and dismiss the affect, the affect or the feelings that are in the room, which can invalidate and make us feel like we're feeling less.
Right.
Even when I think about, some of the work that I do within the African American community, for many women, Black women, we've been taught that sometimes emotional expression is a sign of weakness, especially any emotion that's not anger.
Right.
Anger is a sign of strength, but empathy, sympathy, feelings of hurt, expressing feelings of sadness are sometimes considered a sign of weakness. So we've been socialized not to be weak, to be strong, and those are weak feelings. So I find that a lot of times in our community, we may have a tendency to rely on more of an intellectual understanding, an intellectualization of experiences versus that I felt that experience. I know sometimes this happens in grief, right? Where it is, you've been sad for 2 weeks. I know you lost your mom. I know you lost your husband. I know you lost your sibling, or I know you lost your baby. It's time to get up and get over that and keep moving. God allows things to happen for a reason. So just take that and move on. And it's like, yes, God's will is perfect. That is true. And I still have feelings.
Absolutely.
I still miss the person. I'm still sad. It's not a sadness that's connected to hopelessness, but allow me to feel sad.
Absolutely.
And so a lot, this needing to think your way through can do a lot of damage.
Exactly. And we have to learn not only that it's okay to have the emotion, but as you often say, to learn how to sit with the emotion and it be okay. Because if not, if we continue to dismiss or even repress those emotions, as we often see, if we don't deal with our emotions will eventually deal with us. And so that is one of the impacts, if you will, of not necessarily addressing the emotions.
Exactly. And one thing that the computer or the thinker, the intellectualizer does is that they kind of minimize and dismiss what's happening in the room, and it makes people feel unseen.
Yeah.
Right. And so that means that when I'm hurt or when I'm sad, I'm not coming to you. Or you're going to think your way through making, as you mentioned, an excuse for what's happening, right? Or, well, you know what, we shouldn't report this to the authorities because this is going to break up our family. So it's better if we just deal with it internally. And this is how we're going to deal with it. We're going to keep this person away from children, or we're going to, not invite them to X, Y, and Z, but they can still come to, A, B, and C. But you also have the leveler, right? As the fifth role in the family. And the leveler is the person who is direct in their communication.
Yes.
This is the person who will call out what's happening in the family, in the dynamic. So this person is going to show up and they're going to say, now, you know
that was wrong.
Exactly. Or y'all know that this child steals. So
Right.
why y'all got your purses out here? Now, so that they're going to call it out. This person might come in and say, you going to eat that piece of pie because you done gained a few pounds. Now, they're going to call it out where everybody else might have been saying, ooh, is she pregnant?
Yeah.
Is he going through something? Because the
They're the
leveler
one
is
that's
going to
going
come
to say
in.
what everybody else is thinking.
Exactly. They are open. What they say may be honest, but to an extreme, it could also be hurtful.
This is true.
Because they often say what is actually happening and they call it out, sometimes without a filter.
Right.
Sometimes without understanding how people will be affected or impacted. And sometimes without understanding that the family as a whole might not be ready to deal with whatever they're calling out.
That's exactly it. And I think that's something that we see often. You have that one that's like, oh, I'm going to speak my mind. Oh, we know that one. She going to always speak her mind. But like you said, to the detriment of somebody else when they're not ready. Everybody can't handle you today, baby.
Right.
Everybody can't handle it. And so you have to be sensitive to others in the room, the other family members. They may not be where you are. And with good reason. So I also think it's important, even for that leveler, to just all family members, to keep that in mind, that there may be one strength that you have, still does not mean that you should be able to just kind of throw it out there and expect everybody else to handle it and be in the same space. The dynamics, the roles, everybody has a role, and they all can play a huge part in the family, both to the detriment and not.
Exactly. I think what happens is so interesting is that when families get together, it's kind of like people automatically assume those roles, even though they might not have those roles in the rest of their life or in other situations. Now, those are 5 that Virginia Satir talks about, but there are a couple of other roles that I've seen occur in families that, go beyond what she talked about. Sometimes in families, there's a scapegoat.
Yes.
And so individuals blame everything that's going on in the family on this person. So
That's
for
true.
example, the person who reports abuse, it's like, it's your fault.
Yeah.
You're the reason our family is not together. You're the reason that we can't get together on Christmas. You're the reason,
Right.
So the person who might be the whistleblower
Yeah.
becomes the scapegoat. Another one that I think about that we talk about in family therapy is the identified patient or the identified person.
Yes.
And so the identified person or patient is the person that they bring into therapy. We need family therapy, or I'm bringing my son into therapy or my daughter into therapy because they're having all of this. Everybody else is fine, but they're, using substances, or they're going to jail, or so we all need help just to help this one person.
Absolutely.
And what we find in family therapy is that the identified person is actually what we call the bearer of the symptoms.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
So that identified person is acting out all of the conflict, unspoken conflict, all of the secrets that the family is not talking about. Right. They're bearing those symptoms.
Exactly. That is such a valid point. And you know where else we tend to see that is with couples. With couples, when, couples will come in and they're having conflict, but they're coming in and they want to come in for family therapy because they want little Johnny to be fixed. When in actuality, like you just described, little Johnny has been, the term we use, triangulated, have been pulled into their conflict. And now the focus is on little Johnny's behavior. And how often do we have to say, you know what, we're going to let little Johnny sit to the side and let's work on the challenges that are happening between you and your spouse.
Right.
That happens the majority of the time.
Yes. It's like, we're going to focus on little Johnny so we don't have to focus on us.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
So we don't have to focus on us. So what are some things that people can do to kind of break this pattern? What are some of the things that you recognize yourself in any of those roles that we just discussed? How do you get out of those roles? How do you decide that I'm not going to be the placater anymore? Right? I'm not going to make sure I keep the peace between my mom and my siblings and my cousins. How do you determine I'm not going to be the distractor? I'm not going to be the, the clown at the family gather that brings comic relief, that distracts. Like, what comes to mind when you think about how you can change the role?
When I think about just finding yourself in any of those roles and trying to make a shift or make a change, I think the first thing that come to mind for me is boundaries. And perhaps, when I understand, now that I've gotten, for those who are watching, you now identify these family members who may or may not fall into these roles, then the first thing I think I would want to do is, like, now that I understand that, okay, let me make sure that I myself are not falling into the role. And maybe if I establish some boundaries around my type of interaction and how I'm going to engage, I don't want to, let's just say that I don't want to be the one who falls into the placater, when the placater perhaps make excuses. I'll just say that. We'll just use that term loosely. If they make excuses, well, I want to make sure that I'm not contributing to that. So I perhaps maybe need to think about, okay, what is it that if I can just say one thing different, if I can just do something different, the boundaries, maybe just start taking ownership of my own behavior. Those are the kind of things that's just coming up for me off the top of my head.
Setting those boundaries. This is what I will do. This is what I won't do. This is what I'll tolerate. And taking ownership of your own behavior. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think that it starts by doing an honest assessment of what's happening within your family when you get together.
That's true.
Like being honest about, you know what? There's some unhealthy things that are going on. This person has a voice. This person doesn't have a voice. This person speaks over everyone. This person, never says anything. And who am I? How do I contribute? I don't even want to say contribute. How do I fit into this family dynamic?
Right.
Because we all have a role that we play that we've learned. And really kind of reflecting on your family and reflecting on yourself. Is this who I want to be?
Very important.
And making a decision about who I want to be, how I want to interact with my family, and empowering yourself, especially if you're an adult, empowering yourself to say, I don't have to.
I don't. I think that's the key part. I don't have to. Once we understand, I think it's so important. When you understand, like you said, what role you play, then you get to understand, well, wait a minute, I have options. I know this is how this has happened. This has been the family role. This has just been the way it's been done. But there comes a time when I get to say, you know what? I want it to be done differently, and I don't have to be a part of this. And acknowledging that I do have a choice here. Like you said, I think it empowers me to now I get to make different decisions for me and still love my family.
Right.
Still
Right.
love my family.
Right.
I'm not trying to cut anybody off. However, if I need to cut some people off, that may be appropriate
Snip, snip.
and might be necessary for my well-being.
That's right.
But I think that understanding that I have a choice, I can still love my family, but I don't have to be a part of this, I think it's huge. It's real significant.
I agree. And this is hard.
It is. It's not easy at all.
It is not easy because of our connection to family. No one wants to feel isolated.
Right.
You know, this is, you know, how you were nurtured, who has been there for you for good, bad, or, you know, and different. So it's not easy. So sometimes you can't do it by yourself.
You're right.
So I think as we bring this conversation to a close, right? I think it's important to acknowledge or at least let people know, regardless of what family holiday, I'm going to talk straight into the camera, regardless of what family holiday is coming up, family gathering, family event, whether it is, as was mentioned, Sunday dinners, whether it is Thanksgiving or Christmas or New Year's or Easter or July 4th or someone's getting married or there's a baby shower, these family dynamics, these family roles are sure to surface. And as always on Living Well, we like to leave you with a resource. If this has kind of stirred up something in you where you're like, maybe I need to explore this more, we want to leave you with this resource. We want to send you to normalizehelp.org. That's normalizehelp.org. Normalizehelp.org has a lot of resources to help you to find maybe a therapist who can help you to kind of make sense of the family that you were raised in and to help you to decide how you want to approach the next family gathering and who you're going to be, the new person that you're going to be in that family. So go to normalizehelp.org. And as always, we pray that you are living well. For more information and resources, be sure to check us out at normalizehelp.org. And you can always email us at livingwell@faithfamily.org to get a question answered or to tell us a story. You never know, your question might make it to air or be the subject of one of our episodes. See you next week.
It's not too late to change, it's time to be the change. It's time to shine that light that lives in you. It's not too late to change, now it's time to change. Now it's time to change, now it's time to change. Now it's time to change, time to change, time to change.